Welcome to the ABCs of Preschool, the show that covers all things from parenting to childcare. And we're going to get real about how not just to survive, but thrive in the early years. I'm your host, Miss Amber. I'm a mom of 5 and early childhood expert with over 25 years in the industry. Whether you're a parent, an educator, or just curious about early childhood education, this podcast is for you. Each week, we're going to dive into what life looks like raising little ones, with special guests, industry experts, and personal stories that will leave you inspired and empowered. Get ready to explore, imagine, and discover the beautifully messy that comes with these magical years. Buckle up, because thriving during the early years is a wild and rewarding ride. Hello, my name is Miss Amber, the host of the ABCs of Preschool podcast. Thanks for joining me today. Today, we're going to talk about a subject that I think has come a long way since I had my first child back in 2000. And then I had my second son in 2002. And I personally have suffered from this conversation, this topic, this thing that happens sometimes to moms. I think we've come a long way about making postpartum depression a topic that should be talked about. And it's talked about and researched a lot more than almost 24 years ago when I was a first-time mom. But I still think there's a stigma, and I think there's a shame, and I think it's not talked about as much as it's needed. As I was prepping for this podcast, why I'm doing this, I was actually with family last week, and it was just really interesting because my grandma, my aunt is 78, and my aunt was talking about my grandma, her mom, my mom's mom, suffering really bad from postpartum after my mom was born. And my grandma was about 36. My mom was her third daughter. But back then, there was no title, there was no word, nothing but how she explained it that, my aunts would get home from school and my grandma just couldn't even function and had to go lay down. So, imagine way back in the 50s, it really wasn't talked about. When I had my second son, I went through this and I didn't realize what was going on. So today's episode, we're going to talk about understanding postpartum depression. And I first want to start with, I am not a psychologist. I am not a therapist. I am not a doctor. I do not specialize in mental health. I am a mom. I am a preschool owner, a business owner, but I am a mom who I suffered myself from it with my second. And I just had no idea what was going on. And it was something I never really talked about. I was really quiet about. But as I've talked to other people, there's a lot of women suffering from postpartum depression, and they're staying quiet about it. And I think it's a shameful thing, but it shouldn't be a shameful thing. So much of, if you have cancer, if you have a cold, if you have the flu, if something's wrong with you, you go to the doctor, you get medicine, you have family there to support you, you take the necessary actions to get better. But sometimes with our mental health, it's a burden that so many people carry alone because there's just an embarrassment and shame. But I just want to have this conversation that's just really frank and transparent and open and loving, that we shouldn't carry shame and guilt around our mental health. We need to start talking about mental health more, and postpartum is part of that. So what is postpartum depression? You may not have experienced this, or maybe you're listening or someone who has experienced this, and actually really share this episode because I want to shed a light on it, and I want to say you are seen and it's okay to ask for help. So what is postpartum depression? And we need to understand how new moms are feeling. So many of us, you're pregnant, you're excited, you cannot wait to be a mom, and you cannot wait to see your baby. And I remember this clearly with my second. I had my first two back to back. They were 17 months apart, and my second was absolutely planned. I took my IUD out when with a month I was pregnant. And I remember after I had him, I was just feeling off. And there's a lot of times where you just feel off because, of course, your hormones are all over the place after you have a baby, right? While you're pregnant, your hormones are crazy. And then after the baby. So I just started feeling off. And I thought I was tired. I had started my own business. I had my oldest son, and now I had a new baby. My kid's dad was starting to travel and was gone all the time. So I was just home with the two babies who were 17 months apart. I was home, trying to learn how to be a business owner, an entrepreneur. But I remember being at the mall, I remember being shopping, and I remember feeling like I was going to fall over. I was having a heart attack. I felt like my heart was racing. I felt so much panic, but I just felt like I was going to pass out. And that's what started with me. I started getting panic attacks like all the time, and to the point where I felt like I was going to die. And I didn't even know what that was. Like, I really didn't know what was going on. You're so consumed with being a mama, being a parent. And then I just started having like sadness. And there's something between, just sadness that kind of goes away. And then there's something that lingers, and a darkness and a sadness. And as much as I loved being a mom, I loved my sons. I wanted to care for them. On the inside, I just was feeling like a shell of a person, and I was really struggling. And how it came out for me was the panic attacks because they just started kept happening. I was suffering for probably 7 or 8 months before it got so bad that I actually went and got help. I went to a psychiatrist and I was like, I don't know what's going on with me. And to be frank, I had suffered from depression years before when I first got married. I really suffered when I got on birth control. I really suffered from depression. And those new years of my marriage, it was a really dark time for me. So I don't know if it just triggered, but I went and got help. And I remember I was put on Prozac for about 6 to 7 months to get me through, but I didn't talk about it. I didn't talk about it. I've hardly ever talked about this in my life, to be honest. And the medicine helped me. I needed it to get through my postpartum depression. And that's what they called it, postpartum depression. And I still didn't know a lot about it. The internet was still really kind of new back then. It was just now getting momentum. So back then, I didn't really do a ton of researching. I think I started to, but I was so in the middle of being a mom. So today, I just want to talk about like it happens, it's a real thing. And if you are feeling like this baby blues is way more than baby blues, like you feel very depressed, you have panic attacks, you're not sleeping, I would really encourage you to go talk to someone. And we need to take the shame out of it. There's so much that changes within our bodies, right? Like, gosh, when we're having a baby and a human being is coming out of our body, imagine. I mean, that is what's happening. All the hormone changes, we have to give ourselves grace and say, we are not a bad mama. We are not a bad person because we are suffering and we feel like we have darkness in us. We are not a bad person, but we need help. And it's okay to seek medication, whatever you need to do, a therapist to help get you through this. I think this topic is so important because I think there's a lot of moms that feel really sad after having the baby. And we need to bring this conversation up to say that it's normal and it's okay. And if this is you, it's okay. And this happens sometimes, but let's get the help that you need to get you feeling way better. So, what is postpartum depression? It is a type of sadness or depression that happens after a mom has a baby. Now, sometimes it might be a first time mom. For me, it was my second. And when I had my third, I did not have postpartum. So, for some reason, after having my second son, that's when it triggered for me. And there's a difference between the baby blues, which is common and lasts just a short time, because you also have to imagine how tired we are, right? It's like the baby blues. We're exhausted. We have a baby, then we're nursing, the baby's up all night, we're not getting sleep. So there's just so many factors that are happening. But there's baby blues that last a short amount of time. And then there's PPD, postpartum depression, which is way more serious and lasts a lot longer. So if you've had a baby and you're just finding yourself in this loop of sadness and depression and your body's acting out and it's going on for months, that may be a sign that you have postpartum depression. And it may be a sign to finally say, I'm not okay. I think I need help. And again, it's not you being a bad mom. It's not. Your body is out of whack. It's so fascinating. 1 out of 7 moms, 14% experience PPD. That is crazy. Like 1 out of 7. So we need to kind of normalize that. We really need to talk about that more. 1 out of 7 mamas suffer from PPD. And PPD can start anytime during the first year after the baby is born. So for me, yeah, it didn't start until like weeks after I had my son. And then it just kept progressing. And for me, the way it came out, like I never had panic attacks in my life. For me, that's how it was manifesting. It says, why does postpartum depression happen? So, why does it happen? Well, the science talks about hormones. Of course, like again, the changes that happen in our body are massive. Like we carry a human being for 9 months. We deliver that human being. We are exhausted. Our hormones are all coming down, our pregnancy hormones. So, hormones are a really huge part of it. So, after the baby's born, the mom's body goes through big changes that can affect how she feels, obviously. All of us who have had babies go through some sort of change after. So, I guess why I wanted to talk about this today is I think we need to start talking about it more. I've talked to more and more people that are slowly like talking about it, but it is a real thing and it is not a reflection against you. Because I think as women, we're supposed to be nurturers and caretakers, and we're supposed to be super women all the freaking time, right? Like all the freaking time. We're supposed to clean the house and do the laundry and take care of the baby and feed the baby all night long and change the diapers and do it all again. And maybe you have a job and you have keep down a job and then you have other kids and you're supposed to take care of those other kids and then you don't sleep. And it's a loop and it's a cycle. And plus all of our hormones that are in us that are trickling away and trickling down and going out of whack after we have a baby. So I want to remind you, if you listening to this and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I think that's what's going on with me, I really would encourage you to go seek help. Because if something physically, if you broke your arm, if you were diagnosed with cancer, if you were diagnosed with diabetes, you would go to a doctor and you would get treatment. I want to encourage you that it's okay to seek treatment for this. And nobody's going to look down on you. You should not carry the shame. You just have to realize something is out of whack and that you need help. And going on Prozac for 6 to 7 months for me, it was like a bridge. It's like what I needed to get through it. And then I weaned off. And then I've been great ever since. I've never once went back on antidepressant medicine. I've been fine ever since. I even had another son and I nothing triggered it. So if that darkness and that depression feels way more than the baby blues and is lasting a long time and it's maybe affecting your sleep and your eating patterns and how you just feel about yourself, all of it, go seek help. Get the support that you need. It is so okay to ask for help because think about it. If you are a parent, if you're a mama, and if you have a daughter, and if she was suffering years down the line, years down the road, you would want her to get help. And to be the best mamas and the best parents we can be, the best mamas, we have to take care of ourselves. And that's not a selfish thing to do. I talk about it all the time. In order for us to be the best mama, the best version of ourselves, we have to get help for ourselves and we have to take care of ourselves. And sometimes we just admitting it and identifying it takes so much pressure off. When I finally figured out what it was like a light bulb moment for me all those years ago. So I want to encourage us as women, as mamas, we need to start talking about these things, the hard things more. We need to be more transparent because if we open up about it, we may realize that our friend next door and our friend in the other MOPS group or the other mamas group is going through the same exact thing that we are going through. And then you can be there to support them. So if you know someone or if this is triggering you, I want to give you grace and love and say, I see you, I hear you, I've been through it, but I also got through it with the help and support and the meds that I needed. And I want to start taking the shame away. There should be no shame. Just recognize your body is out of whack and you just need a minute and some months and some time to process it and to get help that you need. And it is okay. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Miss Amber, and this is the ABCs of Preschool. If you know someone who is struggling with postpartum, just share this episode, maybe encourage them to get some help. And let's work together as women, as mamas, to take the shame away and to open up the conversation about postpartum because it is a real thing. It happens in 1 in 7 mamas that have a baby in that first year. Have a beautiful week, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening. I appreciate you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to hear this podcast. Make sure to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss the next episode. For more information on how to work with me, Miss Amber, visit me at thelovingstartway.com or follow me on Insta at thelovingstartway.